For 3 weeks, Yu Menglong's driver refused to speak. He declined interviews, ignored investigators, avoided fans, and moved to a quiet suburb near Suzhou where no one knew his name. He refused every message, every knock on the door, every plea from producers begging him to finally say something. He carried the weight of a story he vowed never to release, one that burned behind his eyes whenever someone dared bring up that night. But the sealed voicemail changed everything. After the mysterious message resurfaced, the one Menglong recorded in fear, the one wrapped in static and hidden coordinates, something in the driver broke. Or awakened. Maybe both. At 2:14 a.m., he called a private investigator and said only 5 words. It wasn't supposed to happen. What wasn't supposed to happen? What did he see? Why did he run from the truth for so long? That morning, the investigator met him at a quiet riverside cafe. The driver sat with his back to the window, hood pulled over his head, sunglasses hiding eyes that had clearly not slept. His hands shook, not from cold, but from a fear he had buried and hoped would stay silent forever. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked in a way that didn't belong to a man, but to someone who had witnessed something too heavy to carry. "I'll tell you what I saw," he whispered. "But once you hear it, nothing will make sense the same way again." He took a slow breath, like bracing himself for the truth he swore wouldn't escape his mouth. Then he began. "It started long before the last ride. Long before the last shoot. I noticed things changing around him, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore." He described a moment 2 weeks before the disappearance. Yu Menglong sitting in the back seat as they drove to an evening rehearsal. The traffic was normal. The sky was clear. But when they passed a construction site, Menglong suddenly leaned forward and said, "Did you see that?" The driver looked. He saw nothing but open scaffoldings and streetlights. "What am I supposed to see?" he asked. Menglong stared at the reflection in the window, not outside, but inside, at the faint image of himself mirrored in the glass. "That," he whispered. "The shadow behind me." The driver laughed it off, thinking Menglong was rehearsing a line from a script. But the actor didn't smile. His face tightened, his pupils shrank, and a tremble ran through his fingers. "There's someone following me," he said. "But nobody believes me." The driver brushed it off. But in the days that followed, he started noticing peculiar details, quiet ones that didn't scream danger, but whispered it. The back door of the car unlocking by itself. The GPS rerouting without warning. Static bursts through the radio at the exact moments Menglong looked uneasy. Headlights trailing them at the same distance each night, always turning away the moment the driver tried to get the plate number. One night, he caught Menglong examining the back seat as if searching for something invisible. "What are you looking for?" the driver asked. Menglong replied softly, "The parts they left behind." The driver didn't understand then. He barely understood now. But everything escalated on the night in question, the night he had avoided talking about for years. It started at 11:03 p.m. He waited outside the studio, engine humming, headlights dimmed. The night air was strangely still. Usually, that street carried noise, equipment rolling, people laughing, props clanking. But that night was silent enough to hear the crackle of the street lamp overhead. When Menglong finally walked out, he wasn't alone. Behind him was a man the driver didn't recognize, tall, wearing a long coat, head slightly turned away from the lights. But every time the driver tries to recall that face, he can't. It's like the memory blurs on purpose, smearing itself into the dark. Menglong walked toward the car briskly, pulling his hood tight. "Drive," he whispered the moment he entered. "But where?" the driver asked. "Anywhere." The urgency in his voice made the driver obey without question. As they pulled away, Menglong looked out the window, eyes shifting like he was expecting someone to appear from the shadows. Then it happened. 3 taps. From the trunk. The same tapping pattern now known from the sealed voicemail. 3. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. The driver swore on everything he loved that it didn't sound like metal shifting or objects rolling. It was purposeful. Intentional. Like a message from the back of the car. "What was that?" the driver whispered. Menglong didn't answer. He only whispered, "It found me." The driver's hands trembled on the steering wheel. He sped up, heart pounding. But as they reached the main road, the streetlights flickered, one by one, in perfect rhythm with the tapping. 3 flickers. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. Then the radio erupted with static so loud the driver nearly veered off the road. A distorted voice, one he could never fully describe, whispered something that sounded like Menglong's name. Then everything in the car shut off. The headlights. The dashboard. The engine. The phone. The car glided to a stop on its own. Dead. Silence swallowed the air. Then Menglong said something that would haunt the driver forever. If it comes to the window, don't look at it. No matter how much it knocks. Before the driver could ask what he meant, something tapped again, this time on the outside of the car. 3 taps. On the back window. Not breaking it. Not dragging across it. Just tapping. Slow. Deliberate. Like whatever it was had been following them for weeks, waiting for this exact moment. The driver froze. Every breath inside the car condensed into fog against the glass. Slowly he reached for his phone, even though it was dead, and pressed the screen out of desperation. But the phone flickered on for a split second. And he saw it. A reflection in the rear camera. Not a man. Not a shadow. A figure standing behind the car, head tilted unnaturally, as if listening through the glass. Then it whispered something that rattled the glass itself. Stop running. The driver dropped the phone and shut his eyes, shaking, palms sweating against the steering wheel. He didn't dare look back. Then Yu Menglong spoke again, calm this time. It got in. The driver swears the temperature inside the car dropped instantly. His breath came out in thick clouds. Static swarmed the radio even though the car was dead. And then came the moment he refused to repeat until now. A second voice inside the car whispered from the back seat. Soft. Close. Too close. You recorded it, didn't you? Before the driver could react, the lights on the street sparked back to life. The car rebooted. The dashboard flickered. The engine roared. And Menglong grabbed the driver's arm. Drive. Don't look back. He obeyed without hesitation. They drove until the sky began to lighten. When Menglong stepped out of the car at the riverfront, he turned to the driver with eyes that looked older, heavier, defeated. If something happens, he whispered, don't let them touch the recording. What recording? The driver asked. Menglong only placed a small device in his hand, something old, scratched, and scaldingly hot, then walked away without looking back. That device was never seen again. And neither was he. When the investigator finished the driver's testimony, he realized what the man had been carrying all these years wasn't guilt. It was fear. Because something from that night followed them both, quietly, invisibly, until the sealed voicemail surfaced. And now that the recording is out, the driver fears what will come next. Because if the voice in the backseat was right, someone else has the other part of the message. And they haven't spoken yet. The driver's voice trembled as he returned to the part of the night he had tried for years to bury. His eyes darted around the dim interview room, tracing invisible shapes in the air, as though the memories themselves were haunting the corners. He swallowed hard, fingers flicking nervously along the side of his coffee cup, and for a moment he looked like a man who wished he had never agreed to speak at all. But the weight of silence had crushed him for too long. Tonight, he had finally cracked open. He leaned forward, lowering his voice until it was barely above a whisper, as if the room itself had ears. What I saw, no one was supposed to see. The lights flickered overhead, not dramatically, just enough to feel wrong, and he rubbed his palms together, the friction sounding like tearing paper. He described the alley again. The same alley from part 1. But this time, he let the missing details spill out. He remembered the sound first. Not Yu Menglong's voice, not footsteps, not wind, but a distant humming, mechanical yet human, like a voice being stretched into an engine. He said it pulsed, vibrating the steering wheel beneath his hands, making the mirrors twitch. Then came the flicker of shadow. Not a man. Not a car. Something thin, tall, and bent at the center, like a person paused in mid-collapse, trembling. It stood exactly where the moon should have hit the pavement, and yet no outline of its own appeared. It was as if the light refused to acknowledge it. I tried not to look, the driver confessed, staring at the ground, replaying the moment for the 1000th time. But something grabbed the back of my neck, not physically, but here, he tapped his spine, and forced me to see. He said Yu Menglong stepped out of the studio door a moment later, unaware of the presence blocking the darkness. His shoulders were hunched, exhaustion dragging every movement. The driver saw him rub his forehead, drop something small in his pocket, and look toward the car with a tiny, relieved smile, the kind you give someone you trust. But then came the shift. That instant. The one the driver had avoided describing earlier. He said Yu's smile faltered, and his head turned slightly, as if someone had whispered in his ear. Not loud, not startling, intimate. Like a secret that was too heavy to ignore. What made him stop walking? The investigator asked gently. The driver blinked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he described the temperature drop. How frost crawled across the windshield from the inside. How breath came out in clouds even though it wasn't cold. How the steering wheel burned hot at the same time. 2 temperatures. Both impossible. He said Yu Menglong took one hesitant step backward, his foot dragging slowly, as if pulling against invisible ice. His eyes widened, not with fear, but with recognition, the way someone looks when they see a face from a nightmare they'd almost forgotten. He said something, the driver murmured. Just one word. The investigator leaned in. What was it? I couldn't hear it clearly. It sounded like stop, or still, or maybe stay. But whatever it wasn't meant for me. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, twice, sharp, like a warning. The driver's breath hitched. He continued anyway. He said Yu Menglong staggered toward the car at last, but before he could open the door, the shadow bent itself, contorting in a way no body should move, folding inward and then snapping outward like a sheet of paper whipped by wind. That's when the humming grew louder. A pulsing that throbbed through the pavement. A vibration that cracked the side mirror. The driver gripped the wheel so tightly that the skin of his palms split. He remembered the sting, the thin trails of blood, the way none of it seemed real. But the sound was real. The cold was real. The pressure on his chest was real. He said Yu Menglong froze. Not paralyzed. Listening. As if the shadow was speaking. The investigator asked again, did you hear anything? Anything at all? The driver nodded slowly. There was a sentence. A low one. A whisper that didn't come from outside the car, it came from inside it. He paused. It said, he already knows. The room fell silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. The driver clasped his hands together, knuckles white. That's when he looked at me, he said. And I swear, just for a second, his eyes weren't reflecting the headlights. They were reflecting something behind him. Something that wasn't there when I glanced. His voice cracked. He blinked rapidly, trying to escape the memory. He got in the car a second later, he continued. Shut the door quickly. Locked it. But he didn't say anything. He just kept staring at the rearview mirror. Not at me. Not at the road. At the mirror. The investigator asked, what did you do? I drove, he said. But the street behind us was empty. He swallowed hard. But the mirror wasn't. His chest rose and fell sharply, as though he was struggling for air. In the reflection, there was movement. Slow. Smooth. Like someone standing up from a crouch. But when I turned around, nothing. Just the street. He pressed a fist to his mouth, fighting off the tremor in his voice. Every time I looked forward, I felt fine. Every time I looked into the mirror, I saw it, closer. Not clearer. Just closer. Like a smudge trying to take shape. He said Yu Menglong whispered again. But this time, it was unmistakable. He said, don't let it follow us. The investigator frowned. Follow us? Follow who? That's the part one never understood, the driver whispered. He didn't say me. He said US. As if whatever that thing was, wasn't after him alone. Outside the interview room, a metal door slammed, loud, jarring, echoing through the hallway. The driver jumped, nearly spilling his drink. When the investigator stood to close the door, the driver reached out with sudden panic. Wait, don't leave it open, he whispered urgently. Whatever was in that mirror that night. Mirrors still attract it. His hands shook violently now, but he continued the story, almost as if confessing was the only thing keeping the memories from consuming him whole. That night changed everything, he said. Because I realized something. Something I never said until now. The investigator's voice was barely audible. What did you realize? The driver's eyes lifted slowly, pupils trembling like candle flames. That shadow, that whisper, that thing behind us. It wasn't following him. His breath froze. It was following the voicemail.